Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. I like to make little pieces of jewelry sometimes that have little positive messages to remind ourselves of things. And today I'm going to make a bracelet that has the word hope in it. And you could, of course, put something else in there if you wanted to, like a person's name or, a positive self-esteem message for yourself. But whatever you want to put there, I think it would be kind of a fun project. So let's do that. And before we start that, though, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I could not do this without them, and I do appreciate not only their financial support, but also the great community that they've created over there. So thank you guys for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 21,900, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I really wanted to thank you also for the nice comments. Some of those are very moving. And I do also appreciate the financial contributions, like the Buy Me a Coffees or the Super Thanks or people who buy my merch and stuff. That really helps a lot with the costs of doing this. So thanks for that. All right, well, let's make our hope bracelet today. My wife just sent me a picture of our new cat. He's so adorable. Here, I'll put a picture up here for you. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks I have in my merch store. This particular one has a nice, useful chart on the back, which has gauges to inches to millimeters, and I find that pretty useful most of the time. There's some other ones with different charts on the back or other useful information. What I really like about these is the dot matrix pattern in the background that kind of serves as graph paper to help me keep things sort of symmetrical. So it's also nice to have a place where you can keep track of the projects you've done in the past so that you can revisit them in the future if you want to and remember how you did it and stuff. Okay, so I drew up a couple of things when I was thinking about doing this. Initially I thought I'd do this with 8 gauge, 6 gauge half round, and then have a piece of 18 gauge sheet and then solder them down. I did pick out a stone to be the O. It's a little, it's actually a checkerboard cut quartz, but it's really clear and they're pretty sparkly. I got a batch of these a while back at a show. So it's about 7 or 8 millimeters. I think it's 8 actually, but so we'll make a bezel for that out of 26 gauge, or I'm going to do this the same way in this one that we're actually going to do. This was my initial thought. This is what I finally, this is the one I finally decided on. But I would have done the same thing with this one, is used 26 gauge fine silver bezel strip. And I usually get 3/16 of an inch, which is 4.76 millimeters. However, you could get by with shorter than that probably with this stone. I just buy it at that length so I can cut it to whatever length, or with that height, so I can cut it to whatever height. And then for the letters, I'm going to make them out of 16 gauge square wire. So, and which is going to be pretty much the same thing I do down here, but instead of soldering them down onto a piece of sheet for this one, I'm going to actually create a frame after I make the letters and the bezel, and we'll frame it like that, and then we'll attach it to some 6 gauge half round wires in a way that'll be strong enough to stand up to being a cuff bracelet. So that's my plan. So let's make a bezel first for this. We need to make a little step inside of it, and I'll probably use 18 gauge round wire. Although, you know what? It makes more sense if I use some of that 16 gauge square to create the lip. So let me see if I can pull that off. I may have to make some more because I may have run out, but we'll look. Had a small epiphany there. Since I was pretty much since I'm really low on 16 gauge square wire, and I would have had to have made some more probably to do the inside circle here with that. I may not. I may have enough, but either way, I thought I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Normally I put a couple of layers of wire inside of the bezel to create that step for the stone to sit on. I'll just use a piece of that flattened 14 gauge that I was going to use for the outside border as well, and that's relatively similar in width to 16 gauge, so I think that'll work out in the long run either way. So let's start by making this bezel. Somebody asked me in the comments the other day why I didn't use 1/8 if I was just going to cut it down. And I don't know if I really have a great answer for that. It's just easier to buy one size of bezel most of the time. And I am sort of a disorganized person, and keeping track of everything is challenging. Part of it may be I've just always done it that way, and I'm getting too old to change. Hopefully that's not true. I find hope in you guys, actually. I've met some of the nicest people through YouTube and Patreon. But when I started this, I thought, oh, I'll get lots of trolls because I don't do everything just exactly the way other people do it. And I was surprised by how few trolls I get. I occasionally get somebody who just gets in the comments and out of the blue says something sort of critical without any kind of context. It's just to be a jerk, I guess. But that's okay. 99.9% of the interactions I have with you all are positive. So that gives me some faith in humanity. What am I doing? I never used to have these little jump ring mandrels or bezel mandrels. I picked them up when I bought somebody's tools. I got an oval one and a round one. And they occasionally come in kind of useful, just kind of round things out a little better. Especially when I'm having a bad rounding day, which happens on occasion. Alright, so I just through the rolling mill to flatten it out, I'm going to anneal it, which is to heat it up to the point where it's kind of a dull red color and then let it cool off. That'll soften it up a bit if you're new to this. Alright, I think I'm going to use my my bail making pliers. See if I can get that pretty close. Okay, so I made it kind of a rough estimate of that, maybe a little bit on the big side, so I'm going to cut it a little on the big side as well. That way we can gradually trim it out until it fits right in there. So like right now, it'll close to fit in there, but it's overlapped significantly, so we can snip out some of that. Okay, I'm gonna file that a little bit and then solder that closed. That looks pretty good. Just make sure it's relatively flat. Alright, I'm going to put a few pieces of solder on the pad here. Kind of right where the two are going to be coming together. That is supposing that I can pick them up. I'm going to get these two fluxed first, and then I'll plop them right on top of that. Oh, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle. This is a Silversmith torch. It pulls in atmospheric air here to mix with the acetylene, and it produces a kind of a hotter flame than a propane torch, but not as hot as oxyacetylene because it doesn't have a tank of oxygen pumping pure oxygen into there. It's just air. So, but it's perfect for silver work as far as I'm concerned. Everybody has their own favorites, but this has been my favorite torch over the years. Okay. I'm sort of a clumsy day today, so we'll see if I'll be able to pull this off. I should have thought of using flattened 14 gauge before. It was kind of a sudden epiphany. What do you call a sudden epiphany, or an epiphany you should have had a long time ago? A duh-epiphany? Let's call it a duh-epiphany from here on out. I'm having a duh-epiphany. Okay, so we got ourselves a bezel. We'll have to cut that down a little bit, height-wise, in order to just barely get over the girdle of that stone. But now we need to start making letters, and I have some cut off ends and stuff. Pieces of 16 gauge square wire. So I think I have enough here to put together those 3 letters. I guess we'll find out. Alright, so I want to keep it in the same scale. So I'm thinking I'm going to make the H taller than it needs to be and then just cut it to the right length. Not a lot taller because I don't have a lot to spare, but so we need to cut a little one that goes across the middle there, so let's do that. Use a miter vise jig. If you've never seen these are kind of fun as far as oops, getting a pretty straight end on something. Just tighten these down to hold it in place. Just a little bit of it sticking out there, and then we can just file it flush. This one also has 45-degree angles. They make more expensive ones that also have 60s, I think. If you ever want to get a really precise mark, sometimes I do this. And then I'll use a little sharp object to make a scratch right where they need to be cut. So if I'm making this exactly to scale like that, it needs to be cut right about there. And cut it off pretty close. And just file the rest off right to that line. That's pretty close to the middle. Looks pretty good. I have plenty of solder over here. I sometimes pick solder things where I pick them up on the end of a pick like this. If you're interested, I'll put a link to a video up here. That's a really useful skill once you've got a little bit of experience under your belt. It allows you to position stuff pretty accurately where you want it. So I'll pick up a little piece here. Get this up to the soldering temperature. I'm going to do one more little piece right here. Okay. I'm thinking it might be easiest if I solder this on there next, so it's attached, in order to get it perfectly straight along there. we could actually put them all on there, and then I'll have to be a little more careful with the height of the P probably. And the E is going to have to be exactly right. So, well, let's solder these two together to start with, and we'll go from there. That looks pretty good. Let's make a P now. Let's see. I think to make the upper part of the P, we need to make kind of a U shape on this one, but I need to get kind of a feel for how big I want it to be. Not super big. That's a pretty small thing. Let's do it on the smallest peg on this guy. We'll see how it comes out. That's a little bigger, but I could live with that. That's pretty proportional to the H as far as width, so that kind of seems about right to me. Let's use this little piece for the stem of the P. Okay, at this point, I think I'm gonna do one of the sides up here. And I see that I have to file it a little bit more. So, but I also need a 45-degree angle on this so that I can make a nice frame. And we can use the miter vise jig for that one as well. Actually, it looks pretty good. That should give us plenty of room. See, that way the letters will sit a little bit recessed with this. That's why I wanted it to be a little squished flatter, because it stretches it taller. So I think about like that. But let's, to prevent a lot of excess solder slop, let's pre-melt some solder on the inside of this. I think that would be beneficial. I'm kind of just making an arbitrary decision about how far I want it to stick out beyond the H. About like that, probably. So we already have some solder on that one. I'm going to put a little solder on the outside of this right here. We're looking all right so far. I think I might at this stage go ahead and do the end of this too on the miter-wise jig at a 45. We can get that to be pretty parallel, I think, more before we do the last letter. I suppose we could stop there and just make it a hop bracelet, but then that would greatly reduce our saleability because only bunny rabbits would want to buy it. Oh God, I just did a dad joke. I'm going to try and make it about the same width as the H. Doing that. That looks like an E. There should be some solder on the inside of those two wires, as long as I got it far enough down. Okay. Now, some more of that same stuff. I'm going to cut a piece that fits right in there, and then I may have to manually shape the angles on this one because it's already in this. I think I probably will, but I can at least get them close. But this part I can do on this. Just a tiny bit shorter, I think. That looks about right. So let's cut another one of those. So now we can start working on the little band. So I made some decisions off camera. Decided how long I wanted these to be. I want the overall bracelet to be it was about 6 inches, which is a good size generally. We can always cut it shorter too if we want to, but yeah, pretty close to 6 or 15 and a half centimeters or so. And the way I figured out how to cut these was I just subtracted this from how long I wanted the bracelet to be, and then the remaining length we divided in half. So the other things that I did, I rounded out the ends on the opposite side, and I created a lip here. And the reason I did that is because this is going to be a spot where the bracelet flexes a little bit, and I really don't want having just a single surface connection there. I want it to be connected on the bottom and straight into the edge there, so that it has a really stout connection. We're going to try and bend this after it's polished in a way that it doesn't torque this too much, maybe just slightly, so we get just a little bit of a curve, and then the rest of it will be where the curve of the bracelet is. But we need to get these soldered on first, so that'll make it pretty strong and more stand up longer to flexing, which is an issue with these kind of bracelets sometimes. I think I'll push that down here so nothing goes anywhere. Oops, maybe I should do it more in the middle. That would make more sense. If you're new to this, with something as spread out as this, it's hard to get the entire thing up to temperature if you're using one of those little butane torches. I know a lot of people start out with those. Well, that seems like I got a good connection on there. I'll remove that excess that's sticking out on the inside there, and I will let this pickle for a while before I polish it. Then I'll bring it back and we'll set the stone. So I got everything kind of cleaned up and polished. I got the bezel filed down to about where I want it, just above the girdle. And I do this a little differently than some people do. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher, and then I use the rounded smooth part, which I've generally polished, although it needs a new polish probably, to burnish with. So I'm going to just put that stone in there. We're going to kind of like push it down on one side and make sure it's sitting flat. Push it down on the other side. basically just doing this until it stops moving at all. And then we can go in and fill in the empty spots. The last stage is burnishing, and I use this rounded outer edge. I'll just rub that top edge right where it meets the stone, carefully. I'll smooth out any irregularities. So I'll get that shined up a little bit more, clean up the top of the bezel if I need to, and we'll get some better pictures of it. Tell me what you think. Like I said, you could put any kind of message there that you wanted, depending on how long it is, I suppose. You could put love or peace or whatever, or someone's name. But either way, it was kind of a fun project to try and accomplish. And all right, so I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Well, that was the Hope bracelet. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, you could also spell something else out there differently if you wanted to. I just thought it was a good positive message to have. So if you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you go. And I would love it if you'd take a chance, I would love it if you'd take a moment and check out my main channel page. I just passed 500 videos. I've been producing 3 videos per week for about 3.5 years, so it's added up to quite a bit of content. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find something else interesting over there or useful. So do that, check out a few videos, and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Also, visit the video description down below for pertinent links. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. There's a link to my merch store where you can get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks that I find pretty invaluable. And there's a link to buy my newest ebook, which is a guide to 2024's YouTube tutorials. And it has like 170 pages plus with a link to an original project video, as well as additional information about each of those projects, like things that I learned when I was making it, or things I might do differently if I was to do it again. It includes a materials list, difficulty rating, and just extra things that I thought of about the video. So it's a nice way to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a great way to support my channel. So thanks in advance if you do that. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.